Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today we've got the adjusted box office numbers for the weekend, and really not a whole lot has changed. Sonic the Hedgehog still came in at number one with 26.1 million in the domestic marketplace, with only a 55% drop after adding 31 screens in its second weekend, now reaching a total gross of 106.4 million in the domestic marketplace. Call of the Wild came out with a 24.7 million domestic opening, which is okay unless, of course, you look at the production budget, which we're going to look at today to see how much money that movie really needs to make in order for it to become profitable, or at the very least break even. All the While Birds of Prey has a massive 60% drop off in its third weekend, making only $6.8 million and only having a total domestic gross of $72.3 million, well below the domestic gross of Sonic the Hedgehog. While, of course, I've covered some of the other movies here listed in the box office breakdown over on the Geeks and Gamers channel. But let's go ahead and do a little box office math for you. So let's start off with the new release, Call of the Wild. So Call of the Wild's worldwide total for opening weekend was $40.1 million. So most of the money came from the domestic marketplace. It made very little overseas in comparison. Looks very likely that this film is not going to have a very strong second weekend. We got a couple other movies coming out next week, and also Sonic the Hedgehog seems to continue to be steaming ahead forward, and so I don't think Call of the Wild is going to end up being number one or even number two next weekend. I could see that falling to the number 3 or number 4 spot, maybe even falling below that of Birds of Prey, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. But here's the big thing. Some people might look at that number and they say, Call of the Wild, oh, you know what? It didn't cost that much money, right? It couldn't have cost that much money with that kind of crap CGI for the dog, right? $40 million opening weekend worldwide, that's not bad at all. Yeah, and then you realize that the actual production budget was $125 million, meaning that with marketing added on, the total cost of the film was $187.5 million. And so that $40 million looks a lot less impressive, because what that means is that the actual film itself has so far negative $163 million. Now, how do I get to that number? For those that are new to the channel, you take the number of how much it costs. So $187.5 million is the total cost. You take how much it is make so far. You also take into account that the studio, in this case 20th Century Studios, no longer 20th Century Fox because Disney is stupid and had to get political, but 20th Century Studios only gets about 60% of the box office in this case. So you take the 60% from the $40 million, then you subtract how much it costs to make, and this is where they currently are with this film. So right now they're in the red by $163 million after its opening weekend. Now, I highly doubt that this film is going to be able to make that money back. Once we get next weekend's numbers, I'll be able to make my projections, because normally when you have those first 2 weeks numbers, when you have the first 2 week totals, you're able to project what the film will likely make, because most films follow a pattern where they either make at least around 60% of their entire total in the first 2 weeks. Sometimes they make more, sometimes they make less. And so I try and basically gauge for almost any scenario. There are various examples and various exceptions to that. Big exception this year would actually probably be the box office for two films, Joker, which far exceeded the box office projections that I had for that movie, and also Knives Out as well. And the point that those films overprojected or did better than my projections, even my high-end projections, means the film made more than twice as much as it made during its first 2 weeks, which is insane for any film. What that means is that it has incredible amount of legs and continued to make massive amounts of money into week 3, into week 4, 5, and beyond, which is not surprising with Joker, a little bit more surprising with Knives Out, except, of course, it did have some positive reviews for it, so I imagine that is how the movie made as much money as it did. Now, moving on to Sonic the Hedgehog, because I know this is a film that a lot of people are looking ahead to. The fact that this film actually doubled what it has made, again, it's made twice as much times 2, based on its opening weekend, now up to $202 million total. These are the current projections that I have. So now that we have the first 2 week numbers, I'm able to start making some predictions as far as how much this film is likely going to make. And so the minimum amount this film could make, so let's say this $202 million, let's assume that's 70% of whatever the end number is going to be. Well, that would mean the end number would have to be $289 million. Now, that would be a worst case scenario. That would mean that we would have to have massive drop-offs in week 3 and week 4, which is possible, though not likely because it's gotten very high scores from audiences. And as I see in the comment section on any video where I talk about Sonic, people are huge fans of the movie. Now let's assume a best case scenario. Best case scenario would be it actually doubles the amount of money that it's made so far. So it makes another $202 million. So again, these are all based off of the 2-week total. So let's say it makes another $202 million, 202.9. That would mean the best case scenario would be if the film would make $405 million. Now, this is not outside the realm of possibility, but it is usually a lot harder for big budget films to make that much more money because, as you all know, most people go to see the film in the first 2 weeks and then it tapers off over time. It still makes a little bit of money, but because it made so much in the first 2 weeks, it really doesn't need to make a whole lot more, and it doesn't need to have that bad percentage drops from week 2 to 3 to 4, etc. So $405 million is likely going to be the highest amount that this film can make. What is more likely going to happen? Most films tend to fall in the 60% range, right? So assuming that $202 million is 60% of his entire box office, then we could see the film falling around $347 million. And so normally it depends on how well a film does post the first 2 weeks versus how poorly it does, which means that the film has a range here of 289 to 405. It's going to fall somewhere in between those two numbers. Now, if it's a weaker performing film, it'll fall closer to this number, around $300 million. If it's a stronger performer, it's going to fall closer to the $350, $360, $370 million. And again, this will all depend on how well it does. If eventually China gets the coronavirus actually taken care of and they have any kind of release in China, that could definitely help with the numbers here to boost that number, to boost that level up, because that would be a clear example of explaining how a number in this case could actually exceed my projections, because China has not really been any factor up to this point. But based on the fact that it's still very much a major problem, not just in China, but in other parts of the world, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Though, of course, when it eventually gets released on Blu-ray DVD, I think that those sales will definitely be telling. Now, this film cost $95 million for the production budget, meaning it cost in total $142.5 million. That's when you add in the marketing costs. And that means the film right now is sitting at around negative $20 million, all right? So you take how much it's made so far, around $202 million. You take into account it only gets around 60% of that number. You subtract how much it costs, it's at negative 20. So basically, by next weekend is my prediction. By next weekend, I think the film will probably be close to $300 million or so. Probably around 260-ish, 270, if I had to guesstimate a more accurate amount. And once it gets to that 260, 270, that negative 20 will wipe away, and the film will not only have broken even, but will also have been net gain, net profit, which means that from week 3 on, anything else that it makes is going into that net gain, net raw total. It's no longer trying to make up for its costs. It's no longer trying to make up for any losses. And so Sonic the Hedgehog is looking very, very good. Again, it's going to make its money back by next weekend is my guess. At the very latest, it could even pass that sometime this week because it's still performing very well day to day here in the United States, and also, of course, in other parts of the world as well. A couple other films that have reached their week 2 total. Fantasy Island, which has made so far $33.7 million worldwide. This film, though, costs very little to make, only around $7 million production budget, $10.5 million total cost. This film is actually already profitable, even though it's only made around $33 million. Because it costs so little to make, this film is already about $10 million in the black. So even though the film is not getting good reviews, even though I've heard a lot of terrible things about it, hey, at the very least, they've got themselves another profitable film on their hands. Not the same story for a film called The Photograph, which I had seen no trailers for, have heard really nothing about. Film's only made about $17 million at this point and actually cost $16 million production budget, $24 million with marketing, which means the film is at negative $13 million. So it still needs to make quite a decent amount of money, probably another $17 to $20 million it needs to make in order for it to break even, start to make money. I don't know anyone that's going to see this film movie. I have not heard anyone talk about this movie. So unless it has a massive showing and it has massive legs in areas of the country that I'm just not following, I don't see that film being able to make up its money. Now, some people are asking, where is Birds of Prey? Currently, Birds of Prey And this will be the last film that we talk about. Birds of Prey sits at $173.7 million worldwide, which means currently it's still in the red at negative $41.4 million. Now, according to my projections, there is a chance, a very good chance, that the movie will end up breaking even, going profitable. So my 60% range, right, the place where most films fall, has the film making about $1.4 million. With the max number, so the max profit this film could make will be around $26 million, which means it'll make between negative $23 million and 26 in the positive. So somewhere in between there is around 1 million. I think the film will in all likelihood fall closer to the negative side of things. I don't think the movie is having the type of hold-offs from week 1 to week 2 to week 3. You know, it's dropping 60%. You know, I think I could see it dropping another 55, 60 in, you know, weeks 3 and weeks 4 and continuing on and on. And I think that because it's going to have those kind of drop-offs and it's going to have a lot more competition, not just from other PG-13, PG movies, but also other rated R movies coming up in the future, I think that it's going to find itself in a crowded marketplace. It doesn't really have a lot of passion behind it. People really aren't going to see this film multiple times, and because of that, I don't see it making up that 41 million that it still needs to make up, because remember, it's not just 41 million raw numbers. That means that you have to take into account, again, 60% of this number minus the budget. So in all likelihood, it has to make well over $80 million more in order for it to actually break even. Again, that's just an estimate, around 80 plus million it needs to make in addition to what it already has. This film is set to likely end its theatrical run somewhere around $245 million, though if I was a betting man, I'd say it'd probably be just a little bit above $200 million, meaning the film would be a bust, which I find hilarious, seeing that they're already talking apparently about a Birds of Prey sequel, which doesn't make any sense to me because the film, from everything I've been told and from the half of the film that I have seen, is a Harley Quinn movie that features the Birds of Prey. And so I think it's hilarious that now they're going to try, now we'll do an official real Birds of Prey, and they'll try and make it up to the fans, and they'll try and put the right people in, and they'll try and get the right tone, and maybe they'll actually change the way they market it. But I think that in the end of the day, they've already screwed up the marketing for that so much. I don't think a sequel would do well at this point. And also, if you're a film that's losing this kinds of money and has having this kind of negative reaction from fans, don't think you're really worthy of having a sequel. But anyway, what are your thoughts about the box office? Are you surprised to see that Birds of Prey has a chance of making its money back? I think that's actually kind of surprising for me when I crunched in the numbers. I'm not surprised at all that Sonic the Hedgehog is on the realm of breaking even and profitability, and definitely will make a pretty decent amount of money. Again, somewhere between $31 million and $101 million in net gain profit for Sonic the Hedgehog. Not surprising there. Call of the Wild, Harrison Ford, CGI dog. Doesn't surprise me that this film is needing to make a crap ton more to break even, and I don't think it will be. I think that Call of the Wild will be yet another major loss. This is actually, for those wondering, the first official release, theatrical release under this 20th Century Studios logo. So the first theatrical release to have the 20th Century Studios and not the 20th Century Fox logo. That, of course, a decision being made by Disney for political reasons for them to drop the Fox name. Not just rebranding, but internals show us that it's because they hate Fox News and they hate Rupert Murdoch, and that's why they dropped the name, which is so freaking petty to me. And you know what? Can't say I'm unhappy that this film is set to lose a lot of money, and that Disney, by extension, is set to lose a lot of money. They have a lot of films this year that they have picked up from Fox. They're not doing very well. Yeah, their movies are doing pretty well overall in the profitable category, but you know what? I think Disney's time is coming. At least that's what I hope. Let me know your thoughts about this and all the things talked about in the comments section below. If you like this video, smash the like button, give me a subscribe, it helps me a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless. And now to give a shout out to my February Patreon and Subscribe Star members: Animation Commentator, Brian P., Dion, David Brobrizik. Please let me know if I need to repronounce that name. DivX, Elizabeth M., Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, Frank the Tank and the Shawhan Weird Dog Clan, Harold Francis, The Hunky Chunky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jeffrey Toon, Jeffrey Lebowski, JJ Jonathan Jerembeck, Kenneth Cameo, Lady T, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, Orange Hat Reviews, Outpost Dyer, Perpetual Punster, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, The DJD Show, and Tina B. And over on Subscribestar, Robert Revo, Larry, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, G2 Cool 99, Darkstar 57, Alice McCarthy, US 888-209 Fast, Dean Heiss, Harold Francis, J. Rod the Beer Guru, Nebanon G. Adams, and ZK Man. And a shout out to Riff Racer Request and Sir Lance Elato and Mike Jackson. You rock. Thank you very much for being my Patreon Subscribe-Star members for the month of February. And if anyone else decides to join, at the next couple of days or so, I will add you into this list as well. You guys freaking rock. Have a wonderful one. And as always, God bless.